Hello, I'm Mark Lawson, president of the ECS Publishing Group. We are very pleased to have a chance to visit with Dr. Brandon Boyd, Assistant Director of Choral Activities at the University of Missouri. Brandon has contributed a wonderful new piece to our catalog, and it's in the Duke University Chapel series. It's a setting of the old gospel hymn, I'll Fly Away. So welcome, Brandon.
Thank you for having me.
I'd just love to hear a little bit about your personal story, where you grew up, maybe how you got started in music, anything you'd like to tell us about yourself.
Sure, yeah. Well, I grew up in Florida. Most people can tell by my accent. And but nonetheless, I did. And I grew up going to church religiously. And it was mainly to get out of the house, and it was not always about God for me until later. But I love getting out of the house. But what I really loved doing was Thursday evenings going to rehearsals at my church, or Tuesdays and having rehearsals of different ensembles, and just sitting behind the pianist and looking at her hands and to just discover. And then she would let me come sit next to her, which was like lifting me up off the earth. It was just amazing. And she's still alive to this day. One of my biggest early musical influences was just Mrs. Katrina Smith. But anyway, so I just kind of learned a lot from her about playing, and her style was very different. She was like a recent graduate of voice masters at Southern Miss. So she was a classical singer, but she was a heck of a player. And she changed what was a very, very traditional styles of hymns to being very, what we use, that kind of gospel trinity, that 12/8 version of most of the things. And it just gave me these ideas of, oh, I can do this with this hymn. Because I would listen to it and look at the music in the hymn book and think, so she was arranging her own stuff. She just, we don't call it that in the Black church, but that's just what you do every time you touch the piano. It's your arrangement of it, right? So that gave me some inspiration.
That's great. That's great. So you kind of came to it from the keyboard first?
I did, from the keyboard first. And I went to graduate school, and it was the first time I've ever notated anything other than it was something for college. Like when you have to do notation, dictation in theory. But Andre Thomas was the person to say, hey, start, take something that you like, a familiar tune that means something to you, and arrange it. And he gave me my first opportunity to arrange something for our big undergraduate course. That's kind of how I found my voice, sort of. And I'm still finding my voice, because every time I find a new piece to arrange, it's not like it just pops out. It has to develop,
Yeah. Well, it's, having somebody like Andre to be a mentor in that way is really, I think people ask me for advice all the time for conductors, and I say, find a mentor, for composers, find somebody who will be honest with you and tell you about your music and help you through it. So that's great.
Mark, I think another thing that I just am realizing, even from a conversation today, is that not only did Andre kind of help me understand that, you have something to say. You can take this tune and develop it the way that you want. But he was one of the first persons I've ever known to have like music of the Black tradition orchestrated. And then to hear what's maybe a keyboard reduction, and then to now also hear what an orchestrator or what his ideas may be sent to it just now opens up a whole lot. So that gives you a different kind of flavor of how you treat accompaniment and the voicing and all that kind of thing. So
sure. Well, this kind of as a side, when you kind of improvise at the beginning from the keyboard, is it hard for you to remember what you did to write it down, or are you pretty good about being able to reconstruct things?
Well, I do these little exercises because I have so many ideas that I get an idea and I run it in my head constantly. Mm-hmm. Like an introduction, I've run in my head a million times to just say, okay, control save that one, okay? Mm-hmm. Or an interlude, I do the same thing. So it's like, I kind of know, like that's why I can conduct, when I'm conducting, I don't need the music. Of course, I wrote it, but those moments of how I constructed it are just so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
I know, there's a reason about why is it 2 times here? Why is it 3 times there? Why is it 8-measure introduction and a 4-measure interlude of some sort? I mean, just there's always a reason,
Yeah. Well, tell me about the I'll Fly Away piece and how it came into
yeah. Sure. Southwestern Adventist University. Jonathan Wall asked me to write a piece, to arrange a piece for one of their festivals. And I enjoyed it thoroughly. I mean, I didn't know exactly what, but I knew this was a religious organization. So therefore it could be something on the more sacred side. And, it just developed itself kind of from thinking of what is something that means something to this organization, this Adventist group, and in the state of Texas. Gospel music has some roots in Texas, the festival itself just was great. It was in the Meyerson, and I mean, it was just phenomenal. And then COVID,
And I think you played the piano for that first
I did
performance too, didn't you?
Yes, he asked if I wanted to conduct it or play it. But once you, as a conductor, have really worked in your concepts, for someone else to come in and take over the applause, to me, is just unfair.
Yeah.
So it's just unfair. So
Yeah.
I thought it'd be better that I probably fumble at the piano and let him do the conducting.
That's great. And then I think Zeb Hyben at Duke University heard it and picked it up and wanted to put it in his series. I know that this will be done in a lot of schools, and I kind of put this "I'll Fly Away" text not only in religious terms, but I also kind of think of it as kind of Americana.
Yeah.
What would you have to say to the public school people who might be trying to think if they could actually get away with doing this in their classrooms or not?
Oh, for sure. I think that you look at the text and how can we think of things metaphorically? There are so many times that we get ourselves out of our current situation by just imagining being in a new space. And that is so closely related to this pandemic in which we've been in, that we will be out of this current space that we're in, this current mindset that we're in, and we're anticipating what is new. But not only that, 10 years from now, we'll be in a new space where we also want to advance ourselves. So to me, it's a wonderful graduation piece. I mean, it could be for a lot of things. It could celebrate someone's, literally their transition from one place to the next, no matter where, figuratively as well. And so there are ways to find that this text and the excitement behind the piece can just put you in this energetic moment and space that allows you to celebrate what's to come and not what's currently here. So I hope people see text, that does come from the spiritual or the religious, idiom. But most of the time, it is to inspire us. It is to be inspiration. So no matter what your faith background is, it's to inspire you. And I think that's what it's mostly about, more so than just trying to convert you into anything, because that's a personal choice. That's a personal choice.
Well, it's a great piece, and I'm really glad you wrote it. So I'm glad to have it in our catalog.
Sure.
So
well, there's more to come.
Good. Well, we always have people watching this who are aspiring composers. And before we leave, I'm just curious if you have any advice that you would have for them or that has been handed down to you that you'd like to say before we close.
I had a wonderful friend of mine tell me that if you want to find anything, find a mentor. You know who that wonderful person was? It was you. So, but no, that is seriously what people I tell people often, is find someone who's doing it. And I will say that I have been inspired by some of my friends more than anybody, than any teachers, because they're people who are in my age category. They look like me. They're Black men, they're white men, it doesn't matter, they're whatever. And it's just things that make me feel like I can do this too.
Yeah.
But I would also say surround yourself in the experiences of new music. And meaning go to concerts and hear new things and new ideas and see how it identifies with you. I mean, it might not. Some things you just said that's just not a part of my outward expression as a composer. But there will be something that you can go, because we've all done it. Heard of people, I could have arranged that. And yes, you could have. But now it's time for you to go and put in the work. And that's the thing not to be afraid of, is the work.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you for taking time to visit today. I really appreciate it. And I want to encourage everyone to take a look at your piece and hopefully perform it And I think that we're all so looking forward to getting back to actually performing again. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.